Hello, my name is Daniel Deming. I'm a web developer living in Philadelphia. This presentation is called Know Your Browser, and it is a compilation of various tips and tricks to aid in front-end web development. The slides for this presentation are available on my website at drlongos.com/presentations. The first topic I'll be discussing is virtualization. If you are serious about doing thorough cross-platform testing, virtualization is pretty much a requirement. There are some alternatives, such as actually having multiple computers running different operating systems, using a screenshot service, or remotely connecting to hosted third-party VMs. But none of those alternatives are really as powerful or convenient as running the VMs on your laptop or desktop yourself. So when you take a look at the different virtualization software that's available, VirtualBox is one of the more popular options. It is available for both Windows and OS X, and in addition to being extremely easy to use, it is also free. Microsoft has a website called www.modern.ie, and on that website they offer a large selection of VMs for testing Internet Explorer, and those VMs can actually be used inside of VirtualBox. Microsoft offers VMs for Windows XP, Windows 7, and Windows 8, and all the different Internet Explorer versions supported on those operating systems. So I'll go ahead and show you what that looks like. Here we can see VirtualBox Manager, and you can see that I have 3 VMs, those VMs provided by Microsoft, one running IE8 in Windows XP, and 2 Windows 7 VMs, one for IE9 and one for IE11. And when you actually view an individual VM, you can see that it's hosted within the context of its own window inside OS X. That gives me full access to Internet Explorer so that I can use it for my testing and development. The next topic I'll be discussing is JavaScript consoles. JavaScript consoles are now present by default in all browsers except for Firefox. Firefox, of course, has the Firebug extension available to it. Firebug was sort of the original JavaScript console, but it is still an optional download to get it installed and configured in Firefox. For browsers that don't have robust native consoles, such as older versions of Internet Explorer or some browsers on mobile devices, you can take a look at Firebug Lite. You would enable Firebug Lite on a specific website via installing the script tag for Firebug Lite, and you can also sort of load Firebug Lite on demand via a bookmarklet. And I'll discuss bookmarklets in more detail a little later. So I'm now going to demo the Developer Tools console in Chrome, and you can access that via View Developer Tools, and it'll pop it open. So at their most basic, consoles enable you to do console line logging. So here I'll show how to log out an object, console.log sample object, and it'll show the object, and you can zero in and sort of expand to view more details on the object and view the properties and methods associated with that object. The consoles also allow you to do real-time inspection and modification of DOM elements on the page. So by clicking this little magnifying glass here and then clicking on an LI element, I'm able to view that LI element, and I can actually make changes to it. Here I'll change the word "and" to an ampersand, and you can see I'm able to modify it on the page in real time. I can also change via the Styles tab over here on the right. I can change the styles associated with it. I can uncheck a style to remove it. So by suppressing that font style, you can see it actually changes the shape of the size of the font, whether that's on or off. And I can change the list style CSS from a square to a circle, and again you're able to see it in real time. Another cool little lesser known thing about the Styles tab in Chrome is that it supports testing the CSS pseudo classes. So on this particular anchor tag here, you can see that there is a hover pseudo class applied to it, and I'm only ever able to view that style when I actually hover over top of it. But by clicking this little guy here and then checking off the hover pseudo class, you can sort of permanently fix it in the enabled position so that when you make changes to it, you can see your changes without actually having to manually hover over. So that's very helpful. The Network tab will show a list of all the external resources associated with the current page, and for each resource it'll give various information, including the nice little timeline view over there. You can click on a specific resource to view a full list of the request and response headers associated with that resource. The Sources tab shows you the full JavaScript source for any script tags that were included on the page. And for script tags such as the jQuery library here that are compressed, concatenated, and minified, one useful bit of functionality in the lower left-hand corner is this pretty print button. And by clicking that button, it will add white space back into the file, which makes it a lot more readable. It can't actually unminify the file, so obfuscated variable names, such as here where we have var_d, it obviously isn't able to unminify that and get it back to its original name, but it can at least add some white space into the file to make it more readable overall. The Profile tab is very useful, and I'll sort of, what that enables you to do is you can start profiling for JavaScript, and then if an error is triggered, you are able to view a full call stack of all the items that that were executed leading up to that error. It also shows various performance statistics related to the individual methods that in the call stack, and those stats can be very helpful in helping you find any performance problems associated with your JavaScript. So again, on getting to the topic of JavaScript errors, the consoles also allow you to do proper debugging of your JavaScript, which is extremely helpful. So in this case, here we have a JavaScript error, an uncaught type error, cannot call method substring of defined. I can click on the file name and it'll show me on the Sources tab the specific location where that error was triggered, but it doesn't actually give you a lot of context associated with that error. So you actually want to use the JavaScript debugger and the ability to add a watch expression to kind of dig in and get a little more context to help you find and fix that error. So by clicking on the line number immediately preceding the error, you are able to set a breakpoint so that when you trigger the error a second time, execution will be paused in the debugger. And this will enable you to add a watch expression here. So what this error is telling us is that we are calling a method on this elem variable, but the elem variable does not have an href method associated with it. So what we want to do is we want to add the elem variable as a watch expression. So when we do that, we can see that the first time that this getTruncated_href method is called, the elem variable contains an anchor tag with the class of trackable. So we know that anchor tags will have an href method associated with them, so that particular invocation of the method is not the problematic one. So we're able to step over and continue the execution of the methods. And here we can see that it actually took us into a different file, the presentation1.js file, where we can see this other file is the one that is actually calling getTruncated_href. And by stepping through line by line, we can see the second time it's called. It's also called with an anchor tag, so no problem there. And then we're able to see that the third time that it's called, it's actually called with the document element. And we know that document element will not have an href property, so that this particular invocation of the function is the one that results in the error. So by using watch expressions and the ability to step through your code in the JavaScript debugger, it really helps debugging your code and makes it a lot easier to find and fix problems. The next thing I'll be discussing is mobile phone debugging. And in the world of mobile phones, certainly the two most popular options are iOS and Android. And if you're running OS X, You are able to install Xcode via a free download in the App Store, and Xcode installs the iOS Simulator program, which I'll go ahead and show you here. iOS Simulator simply gives you a nice little emulated iPhone in which you can click in and very easily load any websites that you need to test and sort of see how they would look in an iPhone or an iPad. And a great feature about iOS Simulator is that it can interface with Safari and leverage Safari's developer console. And the way that works is you open Safari, and in the Develop menu under iPhone Simulator, click on the website that you want to debug, and then when an error is triggered on the iOS Simulator, you can go into Safari and you can click on it and you can actually view the details of the error in the Safari developer console. Furthermore, you're able to inspect elements on the page via the Safari console, just similar to how I demoed in Chrome. So you can see here you're able to do the same sort of real-time modifications in the console over here and then see the impact of those modifications in iOS. On the Android side of things, there is the Android SDK, which will also install an emulator, but unfortunately I found the Android SDK to be a lot more difficult to install and configure than the iOS Simulator. Again, the iOS Simulator, a very easy download from the App Store. The Android one, there's a lot of setup steps, and even after the setup steps, I was not able to get the emulator sort of running smoothly. So the alternative that I turned to are a number of free VMs provided by a company called Genymotion. And those VMs you are able to install in VirtualBox. And here you can see I have a custom Phone 7 Android VM installed in VirtualBox. You can see it here. It gives a nice little tablet view, and I can go into the browser, and then here I can do my Android debugging inside this VM. And one other thing that I'll mention is Android does allow, sort of similar to how I was able to use the Safari developer console with the iOS Simulator, Android also allows a similar connection between a physical Android phone and a desktop version of Chrome, but the two have to be connected via a hardwired USB connection. Another alternative is to look at using Firebug Lite, and you can actually load Firebug Lite via a bookmarklet so that you can get access to a JavaScript console in a Android browser that way via Firebug Lite. The first extension that I'll be discussing is the Web Developer Toolbar, and I'm going to go ahead and demo that in Firefox because I like the presentation in Firefox a little better. In Firefox, it adds the Web Developer Toolbar as a toolbar that is always present, and Web Developer Toolbar just basically provides a number of shortcuts to a lot of really helpful features. You can disable caching, disable JavaScript, disable CSS. It provides a number of options for cookie management, a number of options associated with images. One interesting one is display image dimensions. When you enable that, it'll sort of give you a quick and dirty view of the dimensions of any images on your page. Web Developer Toolbar is also available on Chrome. So on the topic of cookie management, there are a number of helpful extensions for that. So as a front-end web developer, one of the things that you're going to be doing a lot is clearing your cookies as well as changing them. Firefox has an extension called Remove This Cookie. I like that because it adds a right-click option to simply remove the cookies for the site. Chrome has one called Edit This Cookie. You click the icon and you can go in and you can change details associated with the cookie, as well as clicking the Delete All link to clear the cookies for the current domain. Caching is a very important topic because stale resources are a pretty big pain. So many times I've been in the situation where I'm making modifications to CSS or JavaScript and I'm not seeing my modifications reflected on the page, and sometimes I won't be able to understand why something's not working, and then I finally realize that the JavaScript I'm working on is simply cached, and I actually fixed the problem 15 minutes ago, but I wasn't seeing the fix because I had the old JavaScript cached. So one of the things that I like to do is simply turn the caching off in all my browsers. So that way I really never have to worry about it. So I'm now going to quickly show how to turn off the cache in all the main browsers. In Chrome, you click the gear icon, and then the option you want is the first option there, to disable cache. And one important note is, as it explains here, the cache will only be disabled while DevTools is open. So if you go ahead and you hide the developer console, the cache will be turned back on. Furthermore, I've also noticed Chrome will, even when this option is enabled, every once in a while Chrome will still sort of persistently cache some stuff. And generally it's pretty rare, but when I do run across that, rebooting the browser tends to fix the issue and successfully clear the cache. In Firefox, you're able to disable the cache via disable cache in the web developer toolbar. In Safari, you can turn off caching in the Develop menu, Develop, Disable Caches. In the latest version of Internet Explorer, IE 11, you can disable caching also via the developer tools. And actually, while that's loading up, I'll show in IE9, which is a little different. IE9, I believe IE10 and below does not support the option of turning caching off, but they do at least give a button, provide a button on developer tools where you can easily clear the browser cache. So in those older versions of IE, you'll want to go ahead and just click that button to clear the cache in between your page loads, or you can do a shift or control refresh. In IE 11, however, they do actually give you the option to go ahead and turn the cache completely off, and I'll go ahead and show that now. So you access the developer tools via the gear icon in IE 11, and to disable the cache in that browser, you want to click on the icon that looks like a little router. So you first click on this, and then the third option, I believe, yep, always refresh from server. So by enabling that option, caching is now permanently disabled in IE 11. Changing your user agent is pretty important. There will frequently be times when you'll want to replicate. In order to replicate a particular bug, you'll have to change your user agent to sort of match the user agent reported by an end user, or the other times when it's frequently helpful to change your user agent is to do what I call standing out in a crowd. And what I mean by that is previously I have been in a situation where I had to monitor my traffic on a production website, but when I tried to view only my traffic in the web server logs, the problem I was faced with was that I couldn't simply filter for my IP address because there were dozens of other people at my company who used the same browser version and the same IP address. So when I basically was not able to easily filter out their traffic so that I could view only my traffic. So the solution that I hit on was I sort of came up with a unique key, and I changed my user agent to include that unique key so that I could then grep out, filter for that specific key in the access log. So there's a number of extensions that allow you to change your user agent. I'll show one in Firefox, which is these options here. So by default, I'm using the default user agent, but I can easily change to an Internet Explorer user agent, as well as configure and use various custom user agents. Changing the user agent in Internet Explorer unfortunately requires editing the registry, but even so, it's still fairly easy and certainly able to be done. So the next topic I'm going to discuss is changing IE versions. So Internet Explorer is able to actually emulate lower versions of itself, which is frequently helpful. So if I take a look at, let's say, IE9, and I guess this guy has to execute as well. All right, I'll go ahead and demo that in IE11 while that loads. So in IE11, the emulation is accessible via this document mode item here, and you can see IE11 gives me the options of emulating IE10, 9, 8, 7, and even 5. So the emulation is a really nice shortcut, but it's also very important to note that it is emulation, and as a result, it's not going to give you a 100% accurate picture of what the behavior would be if you were running, say, an actual install of IE10. And the biggest area where the emulation sort of falls on its face is in the area of specific browser bugs. So by way of example, when Microsoft released IE9, let's say that they fixed 300 specific bugs associated with IE8. So the behavior that you would want is if you have IE9 and you put it in IE8 mode, you would want those 300 bugs that were fixed to be present and to be reintroduced again. And unfortunately, while that is the case for many of those bugs, it is not the case for all of them. So there are certainly times where if you want to get a 100% accurate picture of the behavior of a particular version of IE, you're going to want to be running a VM of that specific version. But if you just want to do some quick CSS testing to get a general feel for how a layout will behave in different versions of IE, in those circumstances, changing the document mode to emulate a lower version of IE is an acceptable, quick and easy way to test stuff. One other limitation with the emulation comes into play specifically in IE11. So in versions of IE, IE10 and below, when you emulate a lower version, the conditional comments will work as expected. So if you're running IE10 in IE8 mode, the conditional comments will be treated as IE8. But starting in IE11, the conditional comments really don't behave as you would expect. Actually, I think there are problems in IE10 as well. I think in IE10 they maybe work correctly in JavaScript but not correctly in HTML, whereas in IE11 they're completely broken. So in summary, there's definitely some serious problems with the IE emulation of lower versions, which is another reason why in VirtualBox you'll want to have a full suite of representative VMs for each version. Viewing raw HTTP headers is the next topic I'll discuss. As I demoed earlier, in Chrome, you're able to view the request and response headers in the developer toolbar. In Firefox, you can do the same thing in Firebug's Net tab. There's a number of options in Internet Explorer for IE8. There's an extension you can install in IE9 and above. Just as in the other browsers, they're exposed in the developer toolbar. If you're on Windows, there is a great free piece of software called Fiddler that is a proxy tool that enables you to not only monitor but also tamper with the HTTP traffic. And I'll also demo on the topic of HTTP headers, the live HTTP headers extension in Firefox. So by popping that open and reloading the page, what live HTTP headers gives you is a sort of timeline view of not only the original page that you loaded, but all the external resources associated with that page. So you can see that first a GET was issued for the presentations URL, where it was returned with a 200 status, and then a GET was issued for some CSS, for jQuery, and so on and so forth. So I really like the live HTTP headers view in Firefox because it sort of gives everything in this nice timeline view. Sometimes it is necessary to set a custom referrer or also set custom headers to test various areas, particularly when you're doing back-end development. And I find that the tools in Firefox are very good for that. So I will demo two of those. The ref control options enables you to set a custom referrer, and you can do that on a domain-specific basis. And the other extension is modify headers, which you can access via the preferences menu, and this enables you to sort of modify all the headers, and you can set a new custom header that you want to be sent with specific requests, or change the values of other headers that are being set. Spoofy enables declaration of a custom referrer in Chrome. Poster is a useful extension that enables you to test web requests against various REST-based APIs. So I can, here I'll demo it in Chrome. Basically, you can enter a URL, you can enter any values that you want to be sent with the request, and then not only does it enable you to do gets, but it enables the full suite of the REST-based HTTP verbs, by which I mean get, post, head, put, and delete. So whereas the browser won't normally let you send arbitrary put requests, the Poster extension enables you to do so pretty easily. It's available for both Firefox and Chrome. An alternative to Poster is the Postman extension for Chrome, which provides similar functionality. The Tamper Data extension is very helpful for doing security testing of a website, and unfortunately it is a Firefox-only extension. There's no equivalent for Chrome or Internet Explorer, but if you need to do security testing in those browsers, you'll want to look at a proxy server like Fiddler. So I will now go ahead and demo Tamper Data in Firefox. So you turn it on in the Tools menu and tell it that you want to start tampering. And then once it's enabled and a form is posted, it'll ask you if you want to tamper with that form. You say that you do, and then it'll not only give you the form fields that were sent, but also sort of give you the option on the fly to change any hidden fields that are associated with the form. So this gives you your opportunity to say, you know, let's try and do some cross-site scripting injection at this point, so you can on the fly sort of change the values associated and submitted with the forms. And where that really pays off, because you know, you can typically do it via your developer tools console as well, but where Tamper Data really pays off is in the area of AJAX forms and AJAX submissions, where there's really no easy alternative to Tamper Data. Because if you use JavaScript to execute a form and you include form fields that are populated from methods and properties of an object, the Tamper Data extension is really the only way that you would be able to sort of get in and intercept and change those values. So again, tamper data allows you to do a lot of security testing to look for shell injection vulnerabilities, SQL injection, and cross-site scripting vulnerabilities that are all able to be tested via tamper data. The JSON View plugin is another helpful plugin that I like, and it basically enables user-friendly display of JSON data. The best way to explain that is to go ahead and simply demonstrate the functionality. So here I have a URL endpoint. It's actually a Yahoo Mail endpoint that returns some JSON data. And if I were to load this in a browser without JSON View, I'd simply view the text that is returned by the endpoint. But what JSON View does is it gives you this sort of rich interactive view where you're able to expand and collapse the JSON data. It gives you some nice color coding and also makes any URLs appearing in the JSON data clickable. So that's a nice little shortcut that it enables a user-friendly display of your API endpoints. Validating HTML is pretty important. It's generally a good idea to validate your HTML because if you have something such as let's say you're missing a closing div tag, that can 99% of the time it's fine and the browsers will compensate for that, but every once in a while it will introduce sort of hard to detect and hard to debug issues in your code. So it's always a good idea to validate your HTML as you go. The web developer toolbar has a shortcut to validate the current URL against the W3's site. That can be helpful for validating production pages. But in the case of a page that you're working on sort of in your local development environment that hasn't yet been pushed out to production, for that you're going to want to look at something like the HTML validator in Firefox, which will validate the live HTML on the page and not actually need a URL to go and check. There is an extension for Chrome called Validity, which will show HTML validation errors in the console, and I'll go ahead and demo that now. This is the icon for it. I click it, and you can see these are all the HTML errors, HTML validation errors associated with my slides. And you might say, Dan, you should have gone and cleaned those up before doing the presentation. But if I'd done that, I wouldn't have been able to demonstrate the feature. So that's kind of my cop-out there. YSlow is a very useful extension that provides performance optimization tips, and I'm going to demo that here in Chrome. It is also available for Firefox, and you can also run YSlow via a bookmarklet. So by running YSlow, it will analyze your the page that you're on and give you an overall grade. You can see the grade that it gave my slides was a C, and more importantly, it breaks down the things that your page is doing well versus the things that it is not doing well. So here it tells me that I need to make fewer HTTP requests. I should be using a CDN, and the server that is serving my website is not adding expires headers for the content and is also not configured to properly handle gzip. On the positive side, I'm not using empty source or href tags. I am putting the CSS at the top of the document, and I'm putting the JavaScript at the bottom. So YSlow is really very helpful for giving an overall view of how you're doing on performance optimization and giving you some specific areas that you can go in and address. Bookmarklets. Bookmarklets enable a user to run user-defined JavaScript on a website, sort of third-party JavaScript on a website. And that is most useful for browsers that don't have a robust plugin system, such as some of the browsers on iPhone or Android, as well as versions of Internet Explorer. The cool thing about bookmarklets is it's very easy to write your own, and they're easy to install. So here is a sample bookmarklet that I wrote that basically just shows an alert. So if I wanted to add that in Chrome as a bookmarklet, I can copy the JavaScript that I want, go into the Bookmark Manager, and go and add a new page. I'll call it alert. And for the URL, you simply paste the JavaScript function that you want to execute. So now within the context of this Chrome page here, I can now execute that bookmarklet, and sure enough, there's my alert. GreaseMonkey and .js are two other ways of doing functionality sort of similar to bookmarklets. GreaseMonkey came first, and .js is sort of a newer version or alternative to GreaseMonkey, both of which are supported in both Firefox and in Chrome. So I'm going to go ahead and demo .js in Chrome. So the functionality that I'm going to show is how to modify Yahoo Mail to remove their sponsored ad at the top of the page. So you can see here we've got a sponsored ad telling me the best way to build muscle. By installing and configuring .js, I can make any modifications to Yahoo Mail that I want to, and the modification that I'll be making is to remove this sponsored ad. So .js works by you create a .js folder in your home directory, and any JavaScript files that are added to that .js folder will be executed when the domain name portion of the file matches the URL that is loaded in the browser. So if we take a look inside my Yahoo Mail file and uncomment this piece of jQuery code here and save it, and then reload the page, we can see that this JavaScript to hide the div with the slot MB ID, which corresponds to this sponsored ad up top here, will get executed after the page has loaded, and sure enough, that sponsored ad is now hidden. One cool thing about .js is it actually adds jQuery to the page for you. So whether the page you're attempting to modify already has jQuery installed as a library or does not, either way you can use jQuery in your .js functions. Here's some additional tips. In Firefox, it is possible to use pipes to separate multiple URLs when you're defining a home page. So in the preferences, you can see here I have 3 home pages configured: CNN, MSNBC, and Facebook. And sure enough, when I click on my homepage icon, it actually goes ahead and opens all 3 of those. Smart keywords, or search engines as they're called in Chrome, enable you to sort of easily add a custom search option, and I'm going to go ahead and demo that with Reddit. So by going to Reddit and right-clicking in their search field, I can choose the Add as Search Engine option, and then the keyword that I want to use is Reddit. So I add that, and now when I open a new tab, if I want to search Reddit, I simply need to type Reddit space cats, and that will automatically execute a search against reddit.com for the search term cats. You can also leverage the search engines feature and simply omit the %s if you want to add shortcuts to websites that you visit frequently. For example, I have the keyword city, CITI, set up to automatically redirect to city cards for one of my credit cards. Profiles are a very useful feature, and I'm going to demonstrate that in Firefox. So by setting up a number of different profiles, when I open Firefox, it'll actually ask me which profile I want to use, and you can see that I have different profiles set up, one for personal and one for development. And what that lets you do is in my development profile, I might have, I'll have caching disabled, and I'll have dozens of extensions that are geared toward front-end web development. But in my personal profile, maybe I have caching enabled, and I might only have a couple extensions that are more related to the stuff that I do when I'm not developing websites. Chrome also supports profiles in a similar manner. Here are a number of additional extensions that I've found helpful. I like to use mouse gestures, which are supported in both Firefox and in Chrome. I actually use 4 main mouse gestures. I'm able to swipe to the left to go back, swipe to the right to go forward, swipe up to open a new tab, and swipe down to close a tab. Duplicate tab is a useful extension available for both browsers, and that is this guy here. When you click it, it simply duplicates the tab that you're on. Server Switcher is another one that I like, and that enables you to set up 2 domains, one which you will register as the production domain, and another one which you register as your development domain. So by clicking on this icon here, I'm able to switch back and forth between the production domain for drlongos.com and the development domain. So here I can switch to the development domain, which is drlongos.dand. In my Etsy host file, I have drlongos.dand configured to point to a version of Apache running on my local MacBook. So again, as I'm doing development, I can sort of work in drlongos.dand, and then when I have things ready, push them to production, and then click this guy, and I can just real quick be redirected to the production version of the page that I'm on. FireFTP is a very nice FTP client for Firefox that I find myself using from time to time. The last thing I'm going to cover are just some Easter eggs in Firefox and Chrome. So in Chrome, you are able to go to the Chrome About URL, where it gives you a list of various internal URLs. The GPU one is sort of a good example. Tells you if hardware acceleration is enabled for your Chrome browser, and gives you a lot of interesting statistics there. Chrome Flags enables you to turn on various experimental features associated with Chrome. Similarly to Chrome Flags in Firefox is About Config, which you can type into the URL box. And again, just gives you a list of lots of different configs that you're able to modify, a lot of booleans that you can toggle on or off. And lastly, in Firefox, you can load About Mozilla, which loads the Book of Mozilla, verse 15:1. The twins of Mammon quarreled, their warring plunged the world into a new darkness, and so on and so forth from the Book of Mozilla. So that concludes my presentation. Hopefully you've learned something, and I encourage you to check back on my website, drlongos.com. I have a blog that I maintain from time to time. So again, thanks for watching.